Yeah, let's just get started with economics from an exam standpoint, which has around 10% weightage. And almost 9 chapters contributing to this 10% weightage. So, yeah, typically the first earlier it used to be 16 chapters in all, but slowly it got consolidated and it has become 9 chapters. So it's not a reduction in the number of chapters, but it was more of a consolidation exercise. So the couple of chapters are pretty big in size, and one such chapter is the first one, where the entire introduction to the concept of economics is being dealt with. And out of the 9 chapters, the first four of them deal with the microeconomics per se, which is more of a company level, firm level, so more of an individual customer, individual seller, so at a very micro level. Whereas the next 3 chapters deal completely with macroeconomics, completely from a country standpoint. The GDPs, the inflations, and the unemployments, more at a macro level, at a country level, is what are the next 3 chapters. And the final two deal with the international economics, where the exchange rates and determination of the exchange rate, purchasing power parities, those kind of stuff will come in the last. So that's how the entire syllabus is being divided into. So the first chapter focuses primarily on economics as a word, talking about demand and supply. Right at the end, it's deciding any price. Even in technical analysis, we have heard the same thing. The price in a market is decided purely based on the demand and supply for a certain set of shares. So this is pure economics. I mean, whenever we talk about the words demand and supply, we are talking about from a pure economics standpoint itself. So just as an introduction, the first thing that talks about is introducing you to different types of markets. So there are some set of market called product market or a goods market, which is like a end product. So there are some companies which sell end products. So more like a B2C kind of companies. They are directly approaching the customers. So probably a computer assembler kind of a market, or probably a washing machine, any durable goods kind of a market. They are all like they are directly selling to the customers. Whereas there are some products which are not sold directly to the customers, but they go as inputs to those products. Probably the entire PC, there are so many things, the motherboards or something, they are not directly sold to the customers, or probably in very rare cases they are sold, but most of their sales happen to the guys who are producing the who are selling, assembling and selling the computers. So those kind of markets are called factor markets, who where factors of production, the market that is existing for factor of production, someone who is giving the land, someone who is supplying the labor or the capital, or any for use for the production, raw materials and everything that go into the production process. The market for those kind of things is called as a factor market. The market for end products is typically called as a goods or a products market, and sometimes it could be both. If it is in a final stage, what could very well happen is it could be sold. It could be sold sometimes as an independent raw material, or it could be sold as a part of the assembly also. So anything that is as a part of the intermediate thing in the production process is what we are calling as intermediate goods. So finally, the goods, any good which you can visualize, if you think that it is a direct B2C kind of a good, we'll put it under the goods market or the product market. If you think it is more of a B2B kind of a product, we put it completely into factor market. So anything that is going intermediate in between these two steps is what is going as a part of the intermediate good category. Because we need to understand, once if I have to understand the dynamics of economics, understanding on to which category the good falls into is one of the important aspects. Now coming to the next topic on demand and supply. So here the word supplier is more like a seller or a producer, right? Sometimes the word very commonly used is producer. Producer is also like a seller or a supplier. Whereas buyer, consumer, these are more synonymous kind of words. When we talk about micro, the best way to understand microeconomics is related to our day-to-day activities, our buying and selling process, right? So if we see some of the points that are going into it, the quantity supplied is greater at higher prices. If the price is higher, the seller wants to sell more out of it. So always look at it like whenever we use the word supply, it is more from seller's standpoint. And whenever we talk about demand, it's more from a buyer's standpoint. Whether it is a B2B or a B2C or any type of a market, whenever we talk about supply, it's more from a seller's standpoint, and demand is more from a buyer's standpoint, because we demand something, someone else supplies something. So the real seller is supplying some good to us, and the customer is buying the good from the supplier. So one point that has to be cleared there. So quantity demanded will always be greater if the prices go down. One aspect. Now the demand and function. See, if I think of a customer, I always prefer lesser prices. If you are a seller, you always prefer higher prices. Where is the proximity between the two, or where is the convergence between the two? Right? I always prefer something low. You always prefer something high. Deals will not happen. Business will not happen. So there is at some point these two things should mix. See, even when we do our bargaining exercise, we bargain at some price, seller says some other price. He comes down, you go up. He comes. So if you are really interested in making a deal, that's how it happened. Because at the end, the supplier's supply curve should meet with the demand, the buyer's or consumer's demand curve. Only then the real price or real quantity, how much you want to buy or at what price you want to buy, comes out from the supply function as well as the demand function. Only when the demand is equal to the supply, demand means the quantity that a buyer is willing to buy or the price the buyer is willing to pay. So the demand, so both demand and supply, we look at them as a function of price. And that function, sometimes I take it of the same good, or the price I take as of the same good or some other good. Sometimes what happens is the quantity I am demanding for computer depends on any other substitute available. Let's say my demand for coffee goes up probably if the tea prices go up. My demand for coffee goes down if the coffee prices go up. That is with the same good. Look at it from a simpler standpoint. My demand for coffee will go down if the price of coffee goes up. Right? Means I will consume lesser of coffee. I will purchase less amount of coffee. Look at it from that standpoint. That is same good. The other good, related good, is the demand for coffee will go up if the price of tea goes up. Right? If some alternative is going up or substitute is going up, people think, oh, let's keep out tea. So the demand for coffee will go up. And sometimes as a measure of income, if the salary levels of people are going up and up and up, a normal coffee, a normal tea stall coffee's demand may go down, but a cafe coffee day demand will go up. The same coffee probably in a different cup and in a different taste, the demand for that will go up compared to a typical tea stall coffee. Right? So what we are saying is any demand function can be looked at from three dimensions. One is of its own. We'll talk about the word called elasticity sometime towards the last part of this chapter, which is what will deal with these three aspects. One, we are talking of from the same good or service perspective. Two, from a related good or service perspective. Three, from an income standpoint. Whereas from a supply standpoint, whenever we are talking of on what basis the supply function, will depend on. Again, it could be on the same good, the raw materials, and if the raw material prices will go up, the seller wants to increase his price, right? Or if the technology that is used goes up, he wants to use that as a base to increase his price, because for him also the input cost will go up. So obviously the cost at which he wants to supply the good will obviously go up. So the supply function is depending on these set of factors. Supply function is depending on these set of factors, whereas demand function is depending on these set of factors. Only when these two factors come together, then only there is a deal that is happening. That is what is basic economics altogether. So we always deal with the curves. There is one demand curve, there is one supply curve. Where do these demand and supply curves meet is what is the price and the quantity purchase kind of a decision coming up. So that's where we always see that the demand curve is downward sloping. Okay, the graphs typically are plotted when we have to plot a demand and a supply graph. The y-axis is always the price and the x-axis is always the quantity that we are purchasing. So now look at it. As the price increases, the quantity demanded for it will go down. Correct? If the price of some particular good actually goes up, I will buy less and less of that particular good. So we always see that the demand curve is downward sloping. Only there are few exceptions where it is upward sloping. We'll talk about those exceptions slightly later. But for a general normal good, the demand curve is always downward sloping. As the price goes up, the demand will come down. Demand is quantity demanded. Demand will come down and vice versa. Whereas in case of supply quantity that the seller wants to sell will actually go up with the price. If the price is going up, he wants to sell more and more out of it because he will get a big profit. Right? So the supply curve is always like an upward sloping curve. The demand curve is more like a downward sloping curve. So typically sometimes just by looking at the slope, if you are talking about it from the equation perspective, Q is quantity demanded, P is the price. So this equation is telling me if the price goes up by $1 or 1 rupee, the quantity demanded will come down by $1.5 and vice versa. And that's a negative. Whereas in case of supply function, you see the slope is plus 1.5. If the price goes up by $1, the quantity that the seller wants to sell will go up by 1.5 units. So the higher the slope, we say that the supply function is more and more steeper, and the supplier wants to sell more and more of it. We'll use the words as appropriately called elasticity. But until that, we can see that the higher is the slope, the higher is the sensitivity of the price. Seller's willingness to sell more and more if the price goes up a little bit, and buyer's reluctance to back out if the price goes up a little bit. Right? Then the next set of things that we have to look at in this case is the movement along the curve. There are two things when we talk about over a period of time. Okay, now we have seen that the demand curve is downward sloping. This is how a demand curve looks like. Now what we are also saying is, we always talk about two words. We always talk about the two words. One is movement along the curve. I am moving either up on the same curve or down on the same curve. When can I move up or down? If the price is going up, it's like movement up on the curve. Same curve, let's say today I am here. Today I am here. What does that mean? This is the quantity a person is willing to purchase for this price. right? If this is the price, he is willing to purchase this much of quantity. Now when I say movement along the curve, either I go up on the same curve or go down on the same curve. When I go up, what does it mean going up? The price is going up. If the price is going up, let's say I reach this point where the arrow mark is, obviously it's an indication that the price has gone up and the quantity that the customer is willing to purchase is gone down. If the moment is in the downward direction, it means that the price is going down and the quantity supplied typically is going up. So that's what we are saying. The movement along the curve means it's always with respect to the change in the quantity demanded or supplied because of a price change. If the price goes up, the quantity demanded will come down and vice versa. The same thing with the supply curve. Now when I am moving along the curve. But there is one more aspect in economics, which is shift in the curve. The shift is like, okay, there will be an altogether a new curve that gets generated parallelly. The existing curve, there is a new curve that gets generated either in the upward direction or in the downward direction. That is what we call as a shift in the curve, which means overall the demand itself is changing. Irrespective of the price, it's not with a reaction to the price. If it is a reaction to the price, we say it's a movement along the curve. If it is a reaction to various other items different from the price, for example, as mentioned here, change in consumer taste. If everyone started liking the junk food, obviously the demand for junk food will go up irrespective of what is the price. So that is something where the demand is going up not because of a decrease in the price, right? Just because a taste has changed or some new likeliness is coming up, or probably changes in income, sudden increase in the income. I'll shift to something else. My demand for luxury cars will increase. The moment a lot of people in the country are becoming richer and richer, the lifestyle is changing altogether. The demand for luxury cars is increasing compared to, or probably the demand for cars has increased compared to the two-wheelers. So they are not because of the price. The demand is increasing because of other aspects. Those kind of things, increase or decrease, either way. Increase will shift the curve to the up, decrease will shift the curve to the downside. Similarly, substitute and complementary goods. As I said, substitute is tea and coffee. If the price of tea goes up, suddenly the demand for coffee will go up without anything happening to coffee, because these two are substitutable goods. Assuming. If I say there is a separate market for tea and separate market for coffee, this is not applicable. But assuming people will substitute each other, if tea is going exorbitantly high, they will shift to coffee. Or probably if rice is going exorbitantly high, they may shift to wheat. Those are like substitutable products. So the demand for them goes up not because of the price of that particular item, but for some external factors. Those external factors generally are these things: change in consumer taste, income, substitutable and complementary kind of goods. Then similarly, something that is affecting the supply is the change in production technology. Okay, complementary good is like petrol and cars. If the price of petrol goes up, the demand for cars obviously automatically should go down, because assuming there is no diesel car, assuming all cars are petrol cars, if the price of petrol goes up drastically, the demand for cars will come down, should come down, because petrol is the driver for car. These two are complementing each other. The price of petrol going up, okay, people will not buy petrol. If I say only the movement along the curve, it is like people should not buy only petrol. But the demand for cars which are dependent heavily on petrol, that also will go down. Not because of the cars, something happens, not because of the increase in the price of the cars, but because of the increase in the fuel. The demand for cars will go down. Those are like complementary kind of goods. Petrol and fuel are typically called as complementary, petrol and cars are complementary goods, whereas tea and coffee are substitutable kind of goods. And supply side, changes in production technology. If new technology is coming in, there will be a lot of people who wants to sell goods in that new technology. Lots and lots of new companies will come up applying that new technology because they are new guys in the business. Everyone wants to be successful in that space. So change in the production technology happening, you'll see that the supply curve will shift to the right. When supply curve shifting to the right is nothing but upward direction. Because the normal supply curve is more like this. So either it will shift to the right if the supply has gone up, or if the supply is going down, it will shift towards the left. So if there is any change in the price to the factors of production, raw materials changing or labor changing, sometimes big labor laws coming up, the wages have to be increased exorbitantly. Then sometimes the companies may cut down their production. If the labor cost increases drastically, they may lay off some of the labor. Because the labor will have some labor unions and all, we'll see in the macroeconomic factors. But because of that, the companies may resort to some kind of layoffs, but still to the existing guys paying that much of higher wages. Because of that, the production may get hampered. It could be a cyclical kind of stuff. So what we are saying is the supply curve will get shifted either to the right or to the left because of these things which are non-price related. Anything relating to the price, we call it as a movement along the curve. Anything that is not relating to the price, we call that as a shift in the curve. So we'll observe some of the examples of these. Okay, the graphs are already looked at. The downward sloping demand curve, the upward sloping supply curve. Increase in the demand will shift the demand curve to the right. Decrease in demand will shift to the left. Same is the case with your supply curves. Now, then the other term that is more focused on is aggregate demand. Now, at each price, how much quantity people are willing to buy? At each price, see, sometimes, let's say we talk about we talk about some cloths that are available in the market. If the price is at 1000 rupees per shirt, there are some X number of buyers. A 10% discount sale announced on that and making it 900 rupees, probably the number of customers is going up. Similarly, if it is increased to 1200, probably the number of customers could come down. The numbers which we are talking of, aggregate demand, is more like number of quantity demanded or number of quantity supplied, number of units supplied at each particular price is what we are calling as a aggregate demand. Now, there are two words we need to look at. One is the equilibrium price. Two is the market. Equilibrium is nothing but where the demand and supply both meet. Demand is a downward sloping, supply is an upward sloping. Where the two intersect, there is a common price. The intersection, there is a price. If you drop a horizontal, it's equal to a price. If you drop a vertical, it's equal to the quantity. That's an optimal demanded quantity or supplied quantity at that particular price. Now, if I see, this is the demand curve, this is the supply curve. Now, this is where both are, see, supplier wants to be probably here. Because the higher the price, he wants to sell more. Supplier wants to be here. The customer wants to be here. The lower the price, then only he wants to buy more. But these two will never make the deal. So from here slowly buyer compromises, seller compromises, and finally what we see is this is an optimal price. So this would be the optimal number of quantities. So some buyers will back out because that deal may not be an interesting deal for them. Similarly, some sellers will back out. Finally, this is what is the equilibrium price. Now, if the market price is same as the equilibrium price, no issues. But if the market price is really greater than the equilibrium price, seller want to sell more, but buyers don't want to buy. So obviously the price has to come down. If the quantity supplied is much more than the quantity that is bought or demanded, obviously the price has to come down, and vice versa. So if the market price is greater than the equilibrium price, we say that the quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded, which has to pull down the price back to the equilibrium. Similarly, if the market price is less than the equilibrium price, there will be a lot of buyers. Discount, there will be a lot of buyers, but obviously the seller may not be there. So that's where he says till the stock loss or some kind of tax he will put. Because the buyers could be much more than required, whereas the sellers are very few in number. So again, obviously the price has to go up. So that offer cannot be there forever. Right? So those kind of things is what we observe in the typical real day-to-day kind of scenarios. That is what we are trying to exhibit through the aggressive demand and supply kind of a market. Now, just as a simple numerical, let's say 10,000 customers. This is the demand function for them. What is that we are saying in this demand function? This is the demand for gasoline. How much quantity they want to consume gasoline. There they are talking of it is inversely proportional to the price. Right? If the price increases by $1, the quantity will come down by 3 gallons. Because it's a -3. Price increases by 1, the quantity automatically comes down by 3. But they are also saying it is directly proportional with the income, I. Right? If the income of the person increases, his consumption of gas is increasing by 0.02 liters. For every dollar increase in the income of the person, he is increasing his gasoline increase by 0.02 liters or whatever. And same thing is the price of the bus travel. Wow. If the price of bus travel is actually increasing, they are saying that the quantity demanded